Well, hey there, fellow streakers. We have an exciting, fantastic show for you today. We've invited someone on who we've known for quite some time, Mr. Randy McNeely, who is the Chief Kindness Engineer, Global Kindness Champion, Agent of Change, and so many other titles. I can't even name them all. Just one fantastic individual who, by the way, had quite an impact on the streaking book. And so we're excited to talk with him today. Let's get streaking. Hey, Jamie, how you doing?
Great. How are you, Jeff?
Great. Hi, Randy. Welcome to our show.
Well, thank you. It's great to be with you, Jeff. It's just a wonderful privilege for me to be here with both you and Jamie.
Well, thanks.
We're
We
excited
appreciate
to
it.
have
Yeah,
you.
we have to give everyone a little bit of the history as far as we all went to school together at Brigham Young University.
We did.
We're in the same congregation as far as church was concerned, and we just had a lot of interaction. When did you graduate from BYU?
I graduated in 1996.
96. And and what were we, Jamie?
94.
We were 94, so a couple of years before
Yeah.
you, Randy, is when
Yep.
we graduated. And since that time, now I have to tell when we interacted with each other again. I think this is
Yeah.
quite the story. So, what airport was it though? I've always trying to remember.
Dallas, Texas.
It was Dallas. That's right.
Yeah, it was Dallas.
So I'm in the gate area waiting for a flight to. Were we going to Chicago?
We went
Or-
to Salt Lake.
To Salt Lake. We were going from Dallas. I've just messed up this entire story, haven't I? So we're going from Dallas to Salt Lake, and I'm in the gate area, and I'm just hanging out, and all of a sudden I hear my name. Hey, Jeff. And I'm looking around because I know that I'm not traveling with anyone. And again, I hear, hey, Jeff. And Randy comes over to me, says, it's Randy. I said, Randy, wow. And of course, as we always ask, Randy asked me, do you remember me? And I'm like, yeah, I remember you. I mean, we spent a lot of years of life together in college, formative years. Anyway, so he and I reunited, and that was probably, I don't know.
It was 2017.
Okay. So
Yeah.
we're 2021, so 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe it's been that long ago, but it
Yeah,
was. Yeah.
It was crazy.
That is
yeah.
4 years. Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
Look at you knowing all those dates.
I remember dates pretty well. That's about the only thing I can remember. Ask me what I ate for lunch yesterday, and I couldn't tell you.
So what we'd like to do, and the reason why we wanted Randy on is he was a pivotal place in the book as far as writing it. But more importantly is his career as a kindness giver and the things that he's done in his career. And so Randy, where I'd like to start is with you is talk to us a little bit about how you got on this path of kindness. I mean, it is something that not only you do, but you live and you strive diligently to teach others to do. But how did you get on that path from when we left you in college? What took you on this course?
Oh my goodness! After I left college, I graduated with a degree in Middle Eastern Studies, and what can you do with that degree unless you go
Just
and
be
back
kind?
to school? And
Yeah.
I had no desire to go to school for another 8 years to become a professor. I mean, in some ways, in retrospect, maybe I wish I had done that, but I didn't have that desire, and so I got into the IT world and ended up working for a startup company in Provo for a while, doing IT and doing, repairing laptops, going into kids' schools and working with kids' laptops. And then I went from there. I got into the Department of Defense and was working in IT for a while, and then started into information security and did information security and cybersecurity stuff for a long time, and consulting, and eventually got into doing security and privacy assessments in the healthcare world. And I did all that stuff for a long time, helping other companies to be able to help themselves comply with the law, with cybersecurity regulations in the government are very strict, and HIPAA, security and privacy are very strict. Requirements are very strict, and so I was helping a lot of organizations be able to meet their compliance needs. The challenge is whenever you're working in security, you're the security guy, and Jeff, you'll appreciate this. Every company that you've worked for, Covey has security people that help with keep their network secure. They do their training and stuff like that. How many of those security guys do you know that everybody loves to see? Oh, the security guy's coming.
No one.
Oh,
there he is.
Let's talk to the security guy.
Let's invite
You know,
Randy to lunch and talk about
you can be the
cybersecurity.
you can be the nicest guy on the planet, and you're the guy that everybody loves to hate. It's like, and so while I traveled all over the country. I've been to every state in the United States with the exception of two, and one of them's on my bucket list, Hawaii. I don't know about South Dakota yet, but well, no, I take that back. Three. I haven't been to Alaska, and I definitely want to go there.
Okay.
No, no offense to any of my South Dakota friends. I do want to come to South Dakota, but
Hit Mount Rushmore.
well, yeah. Well, actually, I've been to South Dakota, North Dakota.
Yeah,
I'm
I think
getting
it's
There
North
you
Dakota,
go. North
right?
Dakota.
That's
I
usually
haven't
the
been
one
to
that
North
people don't
Dakota.
visit. North
Yeah.
Dakota. You
But
got to go up north.
yeah, yeah. Go to Minot in the wintertime. It's nice and warm.
Yes.
Um, I got to a point where, I'm traveling and consulting with companies, helping them to comply with HIPAA requirements. And in the consulting world, a lot of the time they constantly focus on the bottom line, and which is understandable, but how many billable hours are you going to get? What are you doing? What billable hours have you gotten this week? How are you
Right.
bringing money into us? And one company I worked for really just harped on that constantly. And I got to where, I sat there and think, if we worried half as much about how we're treating our clients and how we're taking care of them, we wouldn't have to be sitting there harping on our bottom line, because we would have we'd have repeat business, we'd have people coming back, we'd have cheerleaders in our corner. They're raving fans that are saying how much they like our services, which would invite and inspire other organizations and clients to come to us. And it really got to me and bugged me. So I decided that I was going to break away and just do my own consultancy and working in HIPAA security and privacy, and which is a great thing. And it's an entrepreneurial thing. The challenge with doing that is, I could have been wiser. I could have been better prepared. But when you break away and you're trying to be your own entrepreneur, well, you take on a whole bunch of other responsibilities, right?
Right.
You take on, you're not just the guy doing the assessments. You're the accountant. You're the CEO. You're the CFO.
You're wearing all the hats.
You're wearing all the hats.
Yeah.
And so while that went okay, it didn't go quite as well as I had hoped. But somehow, one way or another, I've continued to make it and continue to do okay. But after the summer of 2019, you remember there were all those shootings
Oh,
in
yeah.
Texas, shootings in
Yeah.
California,
Right.
shootings in Las Vegas, the big massacre, the guy
Yes.
shooting from the hotel room, all those incidents. They really got to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it really got to me. And I thought, I can't, what do we do? Do I just sit around and hope that the politicians come up with a creative solution, an effective solution? Effective and politicians. Did I just use that in the same sentence? I couldn't do that. And so I felt compelled. At the time, I was in the process actually of working with a good friend of mine on a kindness-driven reality TV show, and I felt compelled to write a book called The Kindness Giver's Formula, which I did. I wrote it. It's a simple formula, but the whole purpose behind it was to inspire people to be more kind, to embrace kindness in their lives, and to hopefully, if I could inspire just a few people, and then they go out and inspire a few other people, and they go out and inspire a few other people, create a ripple effect to invite and inspire people to embrace kindness in their daily lives and in their professional lives, and embrace the power that kindness brings with it. The thing that's interesting is people don't think about this, but we have within each one of us, a tremendously deep well of power that the majority of us barely scratch, barely tap into.
Yeah.
And that's that's why I did what I did, and that's what really pushed me towards um, promoting and advocating kindness. And then, I was working really hard to get Mark to get money to find investors for our show.
Yeah.
And I had just been to Utah. I went to Utah, had a great meeting with doTERRA and as a potential investor, and that was March 10th, 2020.
Oh, wow.
When I
Oh,
came back.
Right before the pandemic.
Right,
and then
before the world shut down.
Yep.
On March 12th, everything shut down.
Yep.
And so,
Just before we get there, let's go back just a little bit because I want to understand something. So you're in
yes.
this world of IT. You're heading along this path. You've got all your cybersecurity, and of course, last person you want to see. However, a lot of success there, and then you were impacted significantly by what happened in 2019 with the world, a lot of the world on fire, if you will,
Yeah.
fueled by a lot of violence and hatred and all of the vitriol that was happening at the time. And you thought to yourself, and so there was an awakening moment there. There was a moment where you said, you know what, I want to do something different. I want to be an influencer in this arena in a significant way.
That's what I heard too, kind of
Yeah.
keyed in, where you're like, I have a choice here where I can just sit and just watch these things go by, or I can decide to try and do something about it, to try and add my part to the change.
Right. So as you were looking at that, had you already started your own consultancy company as far as, okay. So you had already started, and was it based on kindness or was it based on something different?
I started my own consultancy based on cybersecurity.
Okay. So that's what I thought.
Some cybersecurity gigs, but I was also, my transformation started before the shootings happened. A good friend of mine had produced a reality TV show that was on the air on I can't remember which network it was on, one of the streaming networks. They had over 30 episodes that they produced, and I had this crazy idea for a kindness-driven reality TV show where we would interview people and showcase amazing individuals that have been through tremendous challenges, that rather than allowing those challenges to get them down, they'd created these tremendous organizations and things that were blessing other people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
And the premise behind that was not only to showcase these wonderful organizations, but to inspire our audience to want to get out and to serve, and to, if they were sitting on the fence about whether or not they should do something, then maybe inspire them to get off the fence and get out and make a difference. As a friend of mine, a current friend of mine, always says, get out and go mad, go make a difference.
Go make a difference. That's good.
Very sure. In fact, he's another guy you ought to have on this show. We can talk about that later. But so that summer, when I was in the middle of trying to create that show, and then had all these shootings happen and things, that really was an impetus, a changing point for me. And I determined in the fall of 2019, I just determined, there's a statement, and I can't remember where it comes from, but for such a time as this, I think it's from Esther in the Bible.
Yeah.
When Mordecai says to her, perhaps you were born for such a time as this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say, I was born for such a time as this, but that's the way I felt. I have to speak up. I cannot sit back and just idly hope someone else is going to do something. And the interesting thing is, there are more and more people now, especially after what we've been through with the pandemic, standing up and speaking out for kindness.
Yeah.
For looking at people, seeing people as people.
Yes.
Rather than as objects, but seeing people or groups, or identifying them by their skin or by their gender or by anything else, just seeing people as human beings, and not only thinking about them that way and seeing them that way, which is a mindset that I think we all need to have, but also having a heart set, what I call a heart set, where you feel people are worth loving and caring about, and you interact with them in that way, in a way
Yeah.
that shows that you care, and that you put love into action through kindness driven behaviors.
Yeah. We're going to get to that. And just, did you have something? I had one more question
No,
before
go
we got
ahead.
into some of that. One of the questions I had, so did you completely abandon cybersecurity then, and you're fully into kindness, or do you still do a little bit of cybersecurity on the side?
I'm fully into kindness, as crazy as
Okay.
that sounds.
I think that's great.
That's
I
great.
think the reason I asked that is because I think it's important for all of our fellow streakers out there to see how you can make a life change and go from something that you were doing, making money, making a living, and now feeling a life calling to do something different and to contribute in a way that was different than how you were doing it.
And I do like the what you said, for such a time as this, and you're like, well, I don't know if I'm going to say that, but as you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, I thought maybe each one of us does have that opportunity to recognize in our own life, I was born for such a time as this, that we each have something that we're meant to do, that we are drawn towards, that we feel called to,
Yeah,
so to speak,
I
at
think so.
different times in our life. And that we do have the opportunity, and that it really does come down to a choice of, well, I can sit here and let the opportunity pass and life will go on as normal, or I can choose to do something with it. I can choose to accept the way that I feel and be like, you know what? I do feel called for such a time as this, for me specifically, to do this thing right here, right now.
Right. I look at it as well as being a net contributor to
Yes.
the overall thing rather than a net consumer. In our day and age, we can consume so much, be that knowledge, information,
We
material
have a lot to
possessions.
consume.
We can
Yes.
consume
Yeah.
so much. The question is how
How
much
can
are
we?
we contributing back out? And that's what I see what you're doing, Randy, is you're saying, I have got to be a net
How
contributor.
can I contribute? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's why it's interesting. And my titles have evolved over the last 2 years. I had, I was the cybersecurity guy, and then I changed to chief kindness officer. My title, it's easy to do when you're the
when
solo.
you're
You can
when
change your
you're the
title
person,
anytime
you
you
can
want to, but
your title could be as
really,
long or as short as you want it to be, and have whatever words in it you want.
yeah. Well, so I thought chief kindness officer. Nobody's using that title, and I
Mm-mm.
want to inspire kindness in what I'm doing. But then, I listen to a talk. I still go back and listen to BYU devotionals all the time. I love listening to the discourses that are given there. And I heard a professor talking about how the fact that every one of us is an engineer. We're engineering our own lives every day. The things that we do, the habits that we make, the streaks that we create. You
Uh-huh.
Yes.
know. And I thought, I'm a kindness engineer.
Yeah.
I'm striving to inspire people to engineer kindness in their own lives and give them a formula for how they can be kinder every day.
Yeah.
And so I changed to chief kindness officer, or
Kindness
chief
engineer.
kindness engineer. Boy, I can say that.
That's great.
I think it's
A
a great
chief
title, don't
kindness
you think?
engineer. Yeah. So
And
you've referenced the formula. Is it a formula you can share?
oh, absolutely. It's super easy. And the beautiful thing is anybody can learn it and use it every day with a goal and a desire to be kinder every day. And the formula is this: every day, determined to be a kindness giver. Get up, look in the mirror, and just say to yourself, I'm going to be a kindness giver today. And that might seem a little silly to look in the mirror and say that, but the beautiful thing is it just puts it top of mind.
Mm-hmm.
If you get up and think, I'm going to be a kindness giver today, that puts it top of mind. And then the second step is to take 5 or 10 minutes and think and plan ways to be a kindness giver every day. And think of who you're going to be with, where you're going to be, what you're going to be doing, and think of potential opportunities to be kind in those situations. And I say potential because we never know how our day's going to go. We may have the greatest plans on earth, but they always change. It just nothing ever
Mm-hmm.
goes exactly as planned. But then the third step is to look for and act on opportunities to be a kindness giver every day. After you've thought of potential ways and you're going out, put your kindness antennas up, if you will, and look for ways to give kindness away. And they don't have to be elaborate things either. That's the beautiful thing. I love the term you use in your book, laughingly simple.
Yep.
They can be laughingly simple things. You can smile at somebody. You can say thank you. You can hold the door.
Mm-hmm.
You can say a few kind words. We never know when we say some kind thing to somebody, how much it might impact them multiple years later. Can I share just one little story about how somebody did that for me, and it still impacts me today?
Yes.
Absolutely. Love to hear it.
When I was a teenager, and I've shared this story, so some in your audience that have ever listened to me before have probably heard this story, but that's okay. It's worth repeating. I was a teenager. I had low self-esteem. I was going through some really challenging times. My father was being prosecuted for some serious mistakes he made, and somehow I got voted by my class to be a class representative to the student council. I can't even remember how that happened, but I was asked by the student body president to type up the agenda for the next student council meeting, and so I did. I got to the classroom earlier where we're going to be having our meeting, and I laid out all the agendas, and I was just there hanging out. I was there by myself. And then a good friend of mine, beautiful girl named Rochelle Knight, came walking in, and she was very bubbly and cheerful. She was a cheerleader, and she was nice to everybody. And she comes in and picks up the agenda and looks at it, and she looked up at me, and not in an unkind way. She just said, matter of factly, did you know you misspelled the word miscellaneous? And the way I responded says everything about where my self-esteem was at that time.
Yeah.
I looked at it, I was highly embarrassed, and I said, oh, I guess you think I'm pretty stupid, huh? That's exactly how I said it. And to this day, her response still gets me in the heart. She did not miss a beat. She immediately responded, oh, no, I don't. I think you're pretty neat. You don't know I didn't know at the time how badly I needed to hear someone say that to me.
Right.
Yeah.
It went right to my heart. I had to run out of the room. I couldn't cry in front of the girl. I just couldn't.
The cute, bubbly cheerleader girl. Don't cry, don't cry, don't cry.
Well, and she's the kind of, the kind, Jeff, you'll appreciate this, Jamie. You'll know, but she's the kind of girl that all the guys, whenever she came into the room, it's like it's like you just chewed a piece of tongue coffee from the
Yes.
Weasleys.
Yes, exactly.
You can't say anything. So I ran out of that room, ran into the boys' bathroom, and locked the stall door, and just sat there and cried. And I had a feeling of warmth come over me, and I realized, not only, that the Lord was, not to wax religious, but I felt like God was sending me a message right then, right there, that I needed to hear. I think you're pretty neat.
Yeah.
And that has impacted me. I remember that story. I remember that experience. Those 9 words have impacted the entire rest of my life. And that story has impacted hundreds of other people as I've shared it, as a reminder of the simple, kind things that we can say that we made. I had a chance to talk to Rochelle about it years later, and she said, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
I don't remember saying that. I don't remember that experience.
Yeah.
But so those simple, kind things. So that's the third step. Think of, look for and act on opportunities to be kind. Simple things, laughingly simple things. The fourth step, the final step, the final step in my book, and then I've added one, but the final step for my book was invite and encourage other people to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Every day, invite and encourage other people to do the same thing, to be a kindness giver. And then since I wrote my book, and I need to get my second edition updated. I've been talking about it for a while now. I'm working on it right now. But the fifth step, there's a fifth step I added to it. Record your experiences. Reflect on your experiences every day. At the end of the day, take a few minutes and reflect on your experiences with kindness that day and record them in a journal. And why is that important? Because when we record the experiences, at least my experience with recording, with journaling, is that it engraves those things on my heart. So that, excuse me, if I'm ever going through a downtime, which of course none of us ever does, right?
Right.
Never.
We're always happy and jolly.
Yes.
No, but if I'm ever going through a downtime and I need a pick me up, I can go back and look at my journal. It's kind of my happiness log, my kindness log, if you will, and remember the good feelings that came. Remember something kind that somebody did for me, or the feeling of happiness that came as I was able to do something kind for somebody else and see the light come on in their eyes and hear their and feel their appreciation. So that's the formula in a long-winded way.
So I have so many thoughts. I don't know where to start. So first of all, I love that you added a record in your journal, that because I have a streak that is to do an act of kindness each day.
That's awesome.
And so with the intent, the reason I set that streak was exactly what you were saying, was to be able to notice the opportunities that are out there. I think that there was a family when we moved to Georgia that I really taught me that kindness is a skill that you can learn how to be kind. And that the thing that I was amazed with this family is that their entire family was so good at absolutely noticing without any prompting things that they could do, just tiny little things that they could do to help people. And they were doing it as a family all the time. Like they didn't bring attention to it. It was just impossible not to notice, because everywhere they went, you noticed they offered help, and they would notice things. Their children would notice things that I was so impressed that I thought, wow, I didn't even think to ask that.
Right.
And their children would be there saying, oh, can I help you with this? Or I remember when I had first moved in, I was working with her at a volunteer thing, and we were serving lunch to a group of people, and there was a hot cocoa machine there. And I just, in passing, had mentioned, this is the coolest thing. I love this hot cocoa machine. Well, the next year for Christmas, like 7 months later, she brings our family a gift of the hot cocoa machine. And I just was dumbfounded, not just as much by the gift, but by the fact that she had picked up on that little conversation and remembered that I had said, this is a really cool thing. I would love to have a hot cocoa machine. And so I was amazed that she took the time to do it, but even more amazed that she had developed the skill to listen to me so intently in a time when we were actually doing something else, that she picked up on that and remembered it and took the opportunity to do that. And so I love this idea that we can exercise and develop the skill of kindness so that we see how to be more kind. And then I think the ancillary benefit of that is that when you're looking for opportunities to be kind, you're also seeing when people are kind to you and recognizing. And so you start to see more kindness in the world all the way around. And so the reason I love that you'd add the fifth one is that I did for a little while start a kindness journal. So my act of kindness streak, I would write down, but I didn't make that the streak. So I only did it for a little while. But I realized, and it's so interesting because I kind of stopped it because I felt a little bit like, these little things that I'm doing, they're so little. It didn't feel big enough.
Really?
My
After what we teach in streaking,
I
you went there.
I went there. And it was just a couple of days ago that I went back to the beginning of that journal, and I had kept it for probably like a month or 2 months that I had, and I went back and read it. And it's amazing to me how much better the things sound when you've left them.
When you've left them for a while.
When you've left them for a little while and then you come back and read it. I was both impressed by, I was like, okay, I was making progress in noticing things that I could do in being kind. And I was noticing things that people were doing for me. But if you don't write that down, I think it's so easy to not see that that's happening. Does that make sense? Like you don't see the progress. You don't see because like you said, they are little things. And if we get good at it, there's a lot of them happening throughout the day. You don't see the aggregate combination of them.
That's why I think that one of the reasons I wanted to talk with Randy as well is because streaking and kindness go so well hand in hand. When you look at I mean, when you look at it, because how many times did you say, Randy, every day?
Yep.
How many times did you say, write it down. How many? I mean, all of those
The fourth
things.
law: invite other people to
Right,
come along
invite other
with you.
people.
Create a community so that you are.
And one of the things that I've been studying of late is the idea of making things consecutive. So it's not just about the consistency. See, the consistency of the action is I'm going to choose to be kind, and how I choose to be kind may be by smiling at someone. I'm going to be consistently doing an action of kindness. Now, that consistency is different than consecutive. What you want to do with streaking is make it consecutive so that every single day, just like what you said, I could see 3 streaks come right out of this. Streak number 1, I'm going to wake up every morning and look in the mirror and say, how am I going to be kind today? It can be very simple, whatever it is, but that's my streak number 1. And how many days in a row can I do that? Because when you switch that in your brain, when you go from what am I going to do to how many days in a row can I string this together, now we're taking what you do, Randy, and making it even more powerful, because now I'm consecutively doing a consistent activity, and so followed by a second streak of I'm going to, like what yours is, do 1 act of kindness daily.
You could have I'm going to get up and be a kindness giver today. That could be your first streak.
That could be your first streak.
Your second streak is I'm going to sit down each morning and think through the day and try to imagine 3 ways that I could be kind.
Or just one. Make it laughably simple.
Yeah, laughably simple.
Right.
Just think of
one way I could be kind today.
One potential
At least
possibility for kindness in this day.
Right.
And then my streak of do at least 1 act of kindness, and
every
then
single
finish
day.
It up by
right.
Write at least one.
Record at least a sentence in my journal about the kindness that I did today. I mean, you've got 3 streaks there, or 4 streaks there that you look at, and if I do those consecutively every single day, or one of those I may switch to a weekly to make it even more laughably simple, which is I'm going to record at least 1 thing I did this week that was kind. Mm-hmm. The whole key here is to build your foundation, your floor, such that the floor of kindness is always there, and then I can just go up from there. What are your thoughts on that, Randy?
So, well, a couple things. One key component. Everything you're doing, always invite and encourage other people to be kind. And the beautiful thing is that when you're doing what you're doing, you're modeling it. So you may not even need to say anything. People are going to see it. We hear about pay it forward all the time. People see something and then they get that pay it forward feeling. Oh, I need to do something too. Yeah. But I want to go back to something else you said, Jamie. Talked about, they're such little things. These are just tiny things I'm doing. I talk about that in my book, The Kindness Giver's Formula.
Well, we talk about it in streaking. Laughably simple is what we talk about. I mean, that's why I was kind of surprised that you thought that.
I know, because no matter what, I think that is the hardest law for me, even after years and I know it in my heart. I know that the small things make a difference. But when I sit down to look at it, I still get that feeling like,
is it really going to make that
difference?
Well, honestly, done once.
Here's something to put it into perspective as to how it does. I have people have said to me, well, I'm just one person. What can one little thing I do? How can that make a difference in the world today? And so whenever somebody says that to me, I say, think of honeybees. Think of honeybees. Honeybees, how long do you think a honeybee lives? A single honeybee, how long do you think they live?
Not very long. Definitely a summer season.
It's like 6 to 8 weeks is the length of their life. But in that time, in that short time frame, they travel thousands of miles. They travel enough miles to circumnavigate the globe.
No wonder they die early.
Thousands and well, think about it. I mean, their wings are always
right. Exactly.
They visit thousands and thousands of flowers in that time, and they're gathering nectar. And what do they do with that nectar? They take it back to be condensed down into sweet, delicious honey. That is the food supply for the entire hive, and also, of course, supplies us. We take a lot of their honey away because they produce an overabundance. But think about this: they live that short amount of time. How much honey do you think one honeybee produces in their lifetime?
It's like 1/12 of a teaspoon, I think.
It is
something like that. Yeah.
Exactly. But what, Jeff, you get the prize. You are the first person that has ever been able to answer that question. Amy, you better make him a treat or something.
Yeah.
You'll give him a big hug after this.
A 1/12 of a teaspoon.
1/12 of a teaspoon.
And you'd sit and think, wow, that is like nothing. But you take that 1/12 and combine it with 20,000 to 60,000 bees. And how much honey do you think they can produce in a year? They can produce anywhere from 60 to 80, maybe even up to 100 pounds of honey.
Wow.
In 1 year. And I'll take that and think about acts of kindness, little acts of kindness. Your little act may not seem much, but think about the impact if we had hundreds, thousands, maybe even millions, or dare I say billions of people getting up every day thinking, what can I do to be kind today?
Right.
What can I do to go mad, to go make a difference in somebody's life?
Yeah.
Think about the cumulative effect that that would have on our world.
Literally change the world.
Overnight.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, so apropos to, it's the compound interest that I look at. It's the compound kindness. When I've got compound kindness, that multiplies in an exponential way, not in just a singular way. It's exponentially multiplying. So an individual who has a streak to do at least one kind thing daily, and in law number 3, and this is where we look at it, create a community, and where I've got a community of kindness givers, and we're all building on each other, and we're all building this, hey, that was really neat idea. We have one streaker, Randy, that she has now done or not quite 1,100 days in a row of expressing at least one kind thought daily. And so that's 1,200 days in a row. And that's she awesome. Has inspired me in so many different ways.
She was what inspired me to set my streak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now we get all of these people to do the compound kindness, and compound kindness will yield exponential results, just like the honeybee. It is that they are exponential results because of the number of bees that are putting into the pot all of the kindness.
And think about this. It compounds and it ripples out over time. I mean, think about the story I shared about my friend Rochelle. It's been 3 decades, over 3 decades, nearly 4 decades since that happened. And yet that little experience is rippling out through time.
And people.
Yeah, and when we think about the great teachers, I mean, of course, in our lives, we're members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We follow Jesus Christ. We're his disciples. The greatest teacher, the greatest leader to ever live. Think about how his teachings have rippled out through time.
Yeah.
Other great teachers, Confucius, Buddha, Muhammad, all these teachings that of goodness and kindness that have rippled out through time.
Yeah.
And what we never know what, maybe this conversation, somebody listening today is going to hear this conversation and say, oh my gosh, I can take that formula. I can use that formula. I can make a streak. I can follow the laws of streaking. I can do these things. And in my own way, within my sphere of influence, I can make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they start teaching somebody else, and then it works out from there. We never know.
Right. You had a question earlier, Jane. Or did you forget it?
I forgot it.
It went a different direction.
I'm just thinking that the magnitude of it is amazing to think that small acts of kindness and learning the skill of being kind and noticing things more, how that ripple effect can change. Because I think about that family that I shared. They never talked about kindness.
Yeah.
They just did it. Like you said, they modeled it. And it was impossible for me to not notice the way that they did that. And it was inspiring. I thought, I want to be, that was another part of setting the act of kindness streak for me, is because I thought, I want to be able to notice things like that. I want to be able to see people around me and recognize the opportunities and not just have them all be flowing past me.
Yeah.
Because I'm busy.
Right.
That's the beautiful thing about the kindness givers formula. Every day determine to be kind. Every day think of and plan ways to be kind. Every day look for and act on opportunities to be kind every day.
Invite
Invite and encourage
somebody.
others to be kind every day. Reflect and record. Those 5 steps, they're really easy to learn, and they have the exact impact that you're talking about. They help you focus every day on noticing,
Right.
on noticing when there, you can do something kind for somebody else, and then and how you can utilize those opportunities to
Yeah.
bless other people, and in the process bless yourself.
Yeah.
I think so too. And I wonder too if everybody always talks about the 80-20 principle. And I wonder, I had a friend share this to me one time when she was talking about being a good friend. And she said, 80% of the time you're just kind of checking in with people and just being a friend. But when you do that, when you're doing that, the 80% of the time you're there for the 20% when something happens and they really need you.
Right.
And I thought, I wonder if that's similar with kindness, that maybe 80-90% of the time there's small things that we're doing, but because we're doing that so consistently and recognizing it, when that 10% that something really big needs to be there. For example, for your experience was a 10% for you, but for her maybe it was just for Rachel, was that her name?
0.5%. It was just her.
Yeah, it was just her normal, this is just how I live. But for you, it was a 10% life-changing moment that she was there for because she's just living life.
Yeah, I often say you're at the crossroads. When you're consistent, you can be at the crossroads. When you're not consistent, it is variable. You don't know. It's uncertain. But
so
if consistency, like what you said, if you have kindness as your mindset consistently every single day, then you'll be at someone's crossroads that you won't even know.
You may not even know when you're there for them.
And now you've been there where they were deciding whether or not drastically to take their own life,
right,
all the way up to making a life decision, differently than taking your own life. You're there at that crossroad, and you didn't even know you had an impact.
And we've heard that story. It's a true story. I heard this story about the young man who was in high school who had just cleaned out his locker and was heading home and was going to go home and take his own life.
Yeah.
And another young man saw him and said, "Hey, how you doing? What's going on?" And befriended him and asked him, "Hey, would you like to come to my," and I may be totally slaughtering this story, but he asked him, "Would you like to come to my house?" And they got to be friends. And he shared, years later, the young man who had cleaned out his locker was the valedictorian. And he told the story about how I was going to go home and kill myself that day.
Yeah.
I cleaned out my locker, had it all planned. I was going to go home. But then I met Jeff.
Jeff or whomever else. Yeah.
Or whatever, and he was kind to me.
Yeah.
And it made a difference. I'm going to throw out another quick story. Is that okay?
Yeah, please do.
Because we hear, you're all very familiar, Jeff, especially, with you being from Colorado, the Columbine story.
Oh, yeah, completely.
And there was one young man whose life was spared because of kindness. He was in the library, he was hiding under the table, and one of the killers, I don't remember, I think it may have been Dylan Klebold, I don't remember, or Eric, it was either Dylan or Eric, I don't remember which one, came in, had a gun, and he had heard somebody in there, "Hey, who's in here? Get out from under that table." He stood up, a young man named John, I believe, stood up and said, "What are you doing, Dylan? Are you going to shoot me too?" Oh no. And he said, "What are you doing, Dylan?" And Dylan responded and said, "Oh, we're just shooting people." And just cold like that. And he said, "What, are you going to shoot me too?" He said, "No, John, you've been kind to me. You've been nice to me. Run, John. Run." That saved it. That kindness, his act of kindness, even in that situation, you think about that. Think about how many lives, we have no idea how many of these people who have perpetrated these horrendous crimes might have done something differently if they'd had a little more kindness in their lives. And we never know when our little kindness may save our lives.
Yeah. We don't.
We don't know.
So speaking of that, I want to take a little bit different tact on kindness here for a second.
Sure.
And what I want to do is, it's a different view of kindness, and it may be one that is not as, I would say, on its face as kind. And I want to relate it to the interaction that you and I had.
Yeah.
And this is so the interaction that we had when we met at the airport. We were talking, and obviously streaking came up. We were right in the middle of writing the first couple of drafts and manuscripts, and they were awful.
They were so
Yeah,
bad.
I mean, they
do
were
we
just-
have to talk about this? 'Cause I'm going to be embarrassed. No. It's okay.
You know what? It's an act of kindness, though, that is different than what people might think
I think so,
otherwise.
too.
And it's really a neat one. And I think it's one that we need to consider when we're considering kindness, because kindness does not mean, and I'm curious to your thoughts on this. Kindness does not mean you allow people to walk all over you.
Oh, absolutely not.
I don't think that's what we're talking about as far as kindness is concerned. That
No.
you can use me and abuse me in ways that you see fit because I'm just being kind.
Oh.
It's an act that you look to someone and say, I love you and appreciate you as a human being, and therefore am going to be kind to you. In other words, I'm going to be proactively kind. Now, let me run it up to where we're going. So hang in there with me. So Randy and I actually started to exchange emails back and forth, and Randy was kind enough to start reviewing the awful manuscripts up front.
I know. I still feel like I have to apologize to everyone we sent the original.
The original manuscripts to. However, every writer that goes through this journey,
This is what you do. And I was just listening to a podcast the other day of Whitney Johnson, and she was explaining how she's just written her 4th book, and she was sharing an experience of sending a manuscript to somebody and that she trusted and valued their opinion, and they sent it back to her, and she was further along down the process, but it was the person was quite honest with her and brutal with her, and she said always. And so I think this is a part of the writing, is that it's difficult, but you so value when people give you that honest feedback, because
Absolutely.
it changes and it makes
it
your,
better.
Yeah,
It's
it makes
actually,
it better.
I believe,
It's
it's an act of kindness. Yes. So what happened is Randy, he read the manuscript, and we started to talk about the concepts. So not necessarily the manuscript, but the concepts of streaking and what streaking was about. And I remember one email in particular where you said, are you just streaking for streaking's sake? Is that all this is? I don't see how streaking can help at all.
Yes.
In a very, and it doesn't sound kind, but it was actually very kind, because if we were to put out what we were recently working on to the world, it would
You
have
would
been
not have
ugly.
been the only person to ask that question.
And not only that, it would have fallen on deaf ears, and it
Yeah.
would have been awful. What you did at that moment, and a lot of people ask me, because there's like the pivot point of the book is we talk about an email that you sent to us that was from a Randy, and people are like, is that the Randy? I'm like, yep, that's the Randy, where you challenged us and said, if I write one sentence every day, and you happen to write being extreme and dramatic, saying I'm an idiot every single day, what kind of impact is that going to have on my life? Now, for us, that was a huge moment, a huge revelation moment, because what that did is say, well, what if we were to write, not necessarily I'm an idiot every day, but what if we were to write why we were streaking every day? In other words, what we call a be statement, who we wanted to be or to become. And so I remember challenging Jamie. I said, Jamie, would you be willing with me to start a streak to write at least one sentence of who you want to be? And you've done that now for how long?
I don't know. I don't have my iPad with
You don't
me.
have your iPad, but I mean, it's
It's been at
It's
least
in the
3
thousands.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in the thousands.
It's in the thousands, where we will write, and I write every single day at least one sentence as to who I want to be.
But
as
it
far as
was
that's concerned.
pivotal in changing the way that we looked at streaking all the way around, because you asked a really good question. Are you streaking just for streaking's sake? And if so, I'm just not seeing how that's really going to do much. And since then, we have talked to so many people. Like, we have a good friend that's like, yeah, you could set a streak to rub your tummy and pat your head. And aren't you cool? You do that every day, with the intent of saying, what's the point?
I scratch my head. Right
Exactly.
here.
I scratch my head every day, and I've done it every day for 5,000 days. So it really, and what it did is it forced us to look at something that I think we innately kind of understood, but hadn't communicated at all.
Right.
That the purpose is you're trying to become.
You're trying to become someone.
Something,
You're leaning your ladder up against the wall of who you want to be and getting consistent and consecutive with the actions that will get you there. I want to be a kind person. Okay,
Yeah.
so what am I going to do consistently to get there? Anyway, where I wanted to go to is that side of kindness. So, two things. One, when we were having that email exchange, what were some of your thoughts? Now's your opportunity to defend yourself and to say, look, this is where I was going. And two, do you see that other side of kindness where it's I've got to give you some honest, open, candid feedback, and that's actually a really good way to be kind as well.
Okay, so I have a tendency sometimes, and I've gotten better at this, but I have a tendency sometimes to overanalyze and nitpick at things that really don't need to be nitpicked and overanalyzed.
This one needed it.
This one needed it.
It was.
So I'm going to have my Rochelle moment here. I had no idea that email had that kind of impact on you.
Exactly. You
In fact,
didn't.
I was afraid just the opposite. I thought because we kind of after that stopped having interactions for a little while.
It took us. We had to lick our wounds for a little bit and be like, "Hey."
Only a true fan could be that truly honest.
Well, and I think it was twofold. It was licking our wounds, and it started a time of introspection, and literally it altered the book. I mean, we started B statements where we're like,
altered our lives, altered other people's lives. I mean, a whole bunch of other people. We had a book review recently, a couple of months ago, that she said, you know what I love about the book is that it teaches you the laws of streaking, and then you get into the why are you doing it, what it is.
Right.
And she said so many books start out with why you need to be this way and why you need to do all these different things. And what she said is she appreciated that they taught how to do this and then why you want to do that.
But part of the reason was that's the way we discovered it. That was what happened to us.
Ladies, fellow streakers, that was because of Randy McNeely. He is the man on the line that made this all happen. So your nitpicking, we appreciate. That kindness, we appreciated.
I am grateful that it turned out that way because I value our relationship. I value our friendship, and I certainly I'm grateful that it has had the impact that it's had on you. I didn't have any idea at the time. Boy,
just conversing.
I'm going to be outing myself here because I have an ego at times where if I see something and I'm like a pit bull in this way, I'll hold on to something and I have to prove. Or I used to. I'm really gotten much better at this, but I feel like I had to prove that I was right. and in the process, I didn't realize that maybe the way I'm coming about this or approaching this is, even though it's being honest and, if you will, kind, it may not be the best approach to win friends and influence people. It might be the approach of losing friends and alienating people.
For us, it was good to be
really
able
good.
to have that level of honesty.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm grateful that you are kind enough in your hearts to see it that way, and that we have.
It took us a little while.
Oh, I know.
What I'm saying is, in other words, I have my own flaws, and I was like, we
have our own ego.
Yeah, we had our own ego, and to have that. To have that bruised, it's one of those where it's like, can I get rid of ego in my life? And I think that's why I like the kindness formula so much, is because that's another step to getting rid of ego. I'm saying something to you because I value who you are as a human being. And that's why I look at that side of kindness. Anyway, keep going.
I appreciate that. And, I want to, do you mind if we take another step in another little direction for just a minute?
Go ahead, please.
Because something that you said earlier really sparks something in me. When so many times I hear people say, or when I bring up kindness, so I bring up kindness in business in the same sentence. Kindness is just weakness. The nice guys finish last, etc. And the fact of the matter is, you hear about hard skills in business all the time.
Mm-hmm.
What are the hard skills? Oh, well, you know how to use Microsoft Office. You know how to use Excel. You know how to do these things that are, quote, measurable. They're
Yeah.
all measurable. Well, kindness is a soft skill because you can't measure kind. How can you measure kindness? Let me ask you. I want to throw this out there to people. Can you measure turnover?
Sure. Yeah.
Can you measure whether or not people are interacting with respect? You absolutely you can by surveys. You do surveys. It says people. You can ask the question, or have a scale. Of 1 to 5, on scale of 1 to 5, how often do we interact with respect? 3, 4, whatever. You can measure all those different things. If you can measure those things, you can absolutely 100% measure kindness. I can guarantee you can, because every one of those things every one of those behaviors has a basis in kindness. Showing respect, being honest, listening generously, setting clear expectations. Go through all the things that Stephen M.R. Covey wrote in his book.
I was going to say, those sound like the 13 behaviors of trust right there.
Trust, they are. Well, and think about that. What behaviors, any behavior that engenders trust, every behavior, I will argue till the cows come home, every behavior that engenders trust in people has a basis in kindness.
Yeah.
Yep.
Every single one.
And things that you measure, you take more seriously and get better at.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's another aspect of streaking that is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're measuring.
You're measuring.
You can measure over time how I've been doing at this.
Yeah.
You can see what you're doing. You can see the impact it has had over time. That's the nice thing about recording.
Yep.
When you record, you can go back and look, and you may not think it, wow, this really isn't some small thing. But then I'm always amazed when I go back and look at something I've written. At the time I'm writing it, I'm into it, and I think, this is pretty good. And I'll have my wife give me some feedback and other people give me feedback. And then I put it out and I'll get some good feedback. But later on, I go back and look at it and I think, did I write that? Wow, that's
pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, so that's when people talk about kindness being a weakness, I'll throw back at them, okay, how many of you believe that in order to be successful personally and professionally, you need to be able to build strong relationships?
Yeah,
Definitely.
everyone. We all
everyone.
do.
It's vital. You can't. If I cannot connect, would we be having this conversation today?
No.
Mm-mm.
If I had not been able to connect with you guys to your hearts, if I'd not been able to connect to your hearts,
Yep.
we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be having this conversation. In business, would Covey be the company it is today if they didn't have the capability of connecting to people's hearts? Would Stephen Covey's books have been as successful as they were if without the ability to connect to people's hearts? Well, what was it about his books? He's teaching behaviors that help people to engender trust.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And trust is the keystone, the absolute keystone. Connection and trust are the keystone of successful relationships. Well, what's the key ingredient to connection and trust? It's kindness. You cannot get away from it.
Right.
If I treated you guys like dirt,
there's not going to be any trust and no relationship. Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
It's a basic.
Right.
Yeah.
But think about the other side of that, though. What happens we hear about millions and billions of dollars being lost every year because of lack of employee engagement and because of turnover and stuff like that. Think about businesses. They talk about, they know by the cliche statement, when people know you, like you, and trust you, they want to work with you. They know that. But then you ask, okay, how many of you have a specific culture creation plan designed with kindness as part of the strategy?
Right.
Yeah.
And how many people do you think raised their hand?
Yeah, probably none.
None. Yeah.
And yet it is those behaviors, those trust behaviors, that without them, which are basically, they are actually the heart of an organization, because it's behavior that creates culture. It's the things we do. It's the things that you do consistently, the streaks that you create, if you will.
Right. No, you're exactly right.
Of these behaviors, consistent behaviors, kindness-driven behaviors over time that empowers an amazing culture, that what that does, it unleashes creativity, it unleashes innovation, it unleashes productivity, it unleashes loyalty.
Yeah.
And when those things are there, what happens to the customers you have? How do I, if that is the culture of a company, how do you think they treat their clients?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, amazingly. I mean,
They're
if
gonna
it's
treat
That's what
their clients.
that's what I feel like at Costa Rica. I feel like as we were at Costa Rica, they have a culture as a country of kindness. And
Kindness.
you
Yeah.
and I felt it that was one of the huge reasons that I enjoyed going this
yeah,
weekend.
the
That-
basis
that-
was kindness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to throw this out there. That's a Latino
Mm-hmm.
culture thing. I mean, when I was in Argentina on my mission, I was not, I went there as a missionary for our church. I saw, the Latino and people in general are just a very giving people,
Kind
resilient.
people.
And I mean, they could be. We had people that were dirt poor. I mean, dirt poor, and they would offer to give us, practically offer to give us a shirt off their back. They said, "Oh, you want some food?" And so, I cannot tell you how many times I sat across from at a table in a one-room home built by the couple that was there. The husband built the house out of cinder blocks that he made himself. They have one light in the ceiling for electricity. There's a curtain that separates where the dining room is from where they sleep. It's just a curtain. They have 2 or 3 kids, and they were feeding us as missionaries. And we knew those kids were hungry. And yet we couldn't not accept their kindness and generosity in giving us,
Yeah.
whatever meal they gave us, because it would have been an insult to them.
I
They
had
would
thought of-
they would feed us first and then, let the kids eat and stuff like that. But man, I mean, you just, that was just that's just the kind of spirit that they had.
Yeah. I'll tell you, it'd be amazing to continue this conversation because
for a
we
long
could.
time.
We could go for a long time on
long
kindness,
time.
and I do want to explore it maybe at a different time the harder side of kindness, because we touched on it a little bit, but there is a hard side to kindness, which is kindness, and it is something that people need to hear at some point in time. But we've really enjoyed, Randy, talking with you today, and thank you so much for your contributions.
Thank you.
To kindness through the world and to kindness to people everywhere, and for your contributions to the Streaking book. Go ahead. Did you have a thought?
Where can people find your book?
Yeah, where can people find your book, and where can they find you?
They can find the Kindness Givers Formula on Amazon. I just go and search the Kindness Givers Formula, and it'll pop right up. It's the only book with that name.
Great.
And then I'm mostly on LinkedIn, but they can find me at randymcneely.com.
Okay.
And I also have a business website, but it's in the process of changing. We're going through some pivoting and changing. So I'm not going to throw that out there right now because it's
Okay.
But look for it coming soon.
Look for it coming soon.
Yep.
And also your series, your kindness series will be coming out as well. Is that right?
Yes. I am the executive producer for a new kindness-driven reality TV show called The Kindness Factor.
Okay.
And we just filmed 10 episodes for the first season, and we're working really hard on the editing process. And then we'll be going hard after, marketing it really hard, going hard after a distributor. And so we're hoping to have it on the air by next spring, but no later than next fall.
Well, that'll be
sounds
great. Well, wonderful.
We'll look for that, the Kindness Factor.
Well, Randy, thank you so much for joining us today. And for all our fellow streakers out there, just remember that kindness does win the day, and that you can set a streak in order to be more kind. Make it laughably simple, record that you've done it, and create a community around it, and we can all be a little bit more kind, which will allow us to be a better people overall. If you want to ask any questions of Jamie or I, you can reach us at Jeffrey, Jeffrey, at streakingmastery.com, or
Jamie at JAMI at streakingmastery.com.
And as always, you can follow us on Pinterest, Instagram. We've also got it on Facebook or our website, streakingmastery.com, that you can go to. And remember that there's the Streaking app. And in the Streaking app, you can create a kindness community, which allows you to share your streak with everyone and post about what you did on that day. Well, until we talk with you next time, everyone,
Keep streaking.